Good, 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 good. Okay, let's start with a prayer. And I would ask you in your charity to pray for a lady in our parish, Gwen, who is having a lot of health issues. And I ask you to pray for her. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary,
Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners.
now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Now, do you have any questions for those who were here about the last session? Are there any questions at all? Well, okay, we'll just proceed because time is short. But if you have questions, I'm not going to wait till the end. Just raise your hand or jump in and say something, okay? Or send me a chat. But we will proceed. Last week, we spoke about what are the Eastern churches. And I did that for one reason. Quite often, we talk about the law, but we don't talk about, we have no understanding of, let's see, we'll just let everybody in. But we don't understand the churches to which this law belongs. Quite often, we complain as Maronites that the Latins don't know us. We Eastern Catholics don't know each other. We have very little familiarity with Maronites. We have a little familiarity with the Syro-Malankara Church, which is a sister church. So that's why we did that. Today, we're going to talk about three fundamental notions, three very important terms. What is a rite? What is a tradition? And what is a church sui iuris? Okay? Now, I'd like to first of all say that the Catholic Church is governed by two codes. We have, and this is a brand new, usually the ones you will have, if you have a copy of the Latin code, it will be purple, maroon kind of. This is a new edition, which I don't know why they published it in blue, just to confuse everybody. This is the Code of Canon Law. This is the law that governs the Latin Catholic Church. Now, this code has 1,752 canons. The Code of Canon Law, promulgated in 1983. Yes, James? Oh, has 1,752 canons. This governs the Latin Church. This code of canons of the Eastern churches, Code of Canons of the Eastern churches, was promulgated in 1990. And it has 1,546 canons. It governs 23 Eastern Catholic churches. Now, this code is much shorter than this code, than the Latin code. It also contains hundreds of canons that are not even in the Latin code. Why is this code shorter? Because this code is the common law for the churches. Every one of the 23 Eastern Catholic churches then has its particular law, which will complete this code. So if you need to know something about the age to be a sponsor for baptism, it's not going to be here. It's going to be in the particular law of the Maronite Church. Okay, now if you have questions, raise your hands. Okay, so these are the two codes. One in 1983, the Latin Code, one in 1990. Now, we're going to look, first of all, if you have a copy of the code handy, we're not going to read the canons because we don't, well, we can read the first two. They're very simple. I'll read canon 27 to you. 28, paragraph 1. A rite is a liturgical, theological, spiritual, and disciplinary heritage differentiated by culture and the circumstances of the histories of people, which is expressed by each church sui iuris in its own manner of living the faith. Okay. A rite has 4 elements: liturgy, theology, spirituality, and discipline. This is important because, for example, Pius IX, in the middle of the 19th century, he said, yes, all of you have the freedom to follow your own rite, you Eastern Catholics. Rite doesn't include discipline. Rite just is the way you celebrate Mass. Discipline, that's going to be the Holy See. And he was very, very firm with the Eastern Catholic churches, trying to make us all uniform in the way we elected bishops. For example, he wanted all bishops, he wanted to appoint all Eastern Catholic bishops. In other words, we would send him 3 names and the Pope would make the appointment. Okay. Now, this didn't work out so well, but we had, just as, for your information and curiosity, the Patriarch of Jerusalem, the very first Patriarch of Jerusalem, Latin Patriarch, was Joseph Valerga. Okay. If you read the minutes of all the deliberations of the First Vatican Council about Eastern churches, Valerga hated the Maronites. If the weather was bad that day, it was the fault of the Maronites all the time. And he was the advisor for Pius IX. In fact, the Chaldean who refused to ordain the people that Pope Pius IX appointed, the bishops. Pius IX, this was on a Friday evening, said, by Monday morning, I want either an ordination or a resignation. In other words, if he didn't do this, he was going to make him resign. All of this because Pius IX said discipline is not part of a rite. So discipline is liturgy, theology, spirituality, and discipline. Liturgy includes much more than just the way we celebrate our Eucharist. Liturgy also includes architecture. It includes our vestments. It includes our music and just our ambience. Okay, 4 elements. But then these 4 elements can be differentiated by culture and history. In the middle of the 19th century, what was the liturgical language of the Maronites? Bluntly, what was it? Anybody? Unmute yourself. Somebody.
Of course, Syriac.
Syriac, okay. And what was the vernacular of the Maronite church at that time?
Karshuni, Arabic.
Arabic. What is it today? What is the
Mixture.
vernacular of the Maronite church?
Depends on where
English.
church.
English, French, Spanish, Italian, all these various languages. So that's what this is talking about. The Maronite church is now a rite, the rite of the Maronite Church, is now modified because of history and culture. You cannot take the Maronite rite, put it in America, and imagine it to stay exactly as it is in Lebanon. Okay? So we have the four elements differentiated by rite or by history and culture, and this is key. A rite is the way we live our faith. It is not the community, it is the way we live our faith. Okay, so far so good. This is what a rite is. What is a tradition then? There are two different terms in canon law. We throw them all around, but they're different. A tradition, and I'll read Canon 28, paragraph 2. The rites dealt with in this code, unless it is established otherwise, are those which arose from the Alexandrian, Antiochian, Armenian, Chaldean, and Constantinopolitan traditions. 5 traditions: Alexandria, Antioch, Armenia, Chaldean, and Constantinople. Do you remember we talked last week about the centers of evangelization? Mostly Antioch, Alexandria, and Constantinople. These rites flowed out of these centers of tradition. Now, Armenian, Chaldean are not part of the Roman Empire. As you know, they were outside the Roman Empire, but they originally are derived from Antioch. So we have 5 families: Antioch, Alexandria, Antioch, Armenia, Constantinople, and Chaldean. 5 families, and then in each of these families are various rites. Now, what rites are followed? What Catholic rites are found in the Antiochian family? Anybody want to take a stab? Paul?
You have the Maronite, the Syriac Catholic, the Syro-Malankar, the Syro-Malabar.
Not the Syro-Malabar.
The Malabar comes from the
No,
Chaldean, right?
Originally, but it is East Syrian, it is Chaldean. It's under the Chaldean family.
Okay.
Okay, it's under the Chaldean family. So you were right though. 3, the Maronite, the Syriac Catholic, and the Syro-Malankara. Okay. Now, are there any questions about the distinction between a rite and a tradition? So far, so good. Now we're going to talk about a church sui iuris. Sui iuris is the Latin term, the translation of auto nomos, of its own law, or autonomous. Okay. If you'll notice in the code, we don't translate it, because when an Eastern Orthodox would read an autonomous church, they would have the wrong impression of what it is. We would say autonomous, we can govern ourselves. Autonomous for them is something less, like the Church of Constantinople or Moscow are not autonomous churches, they're autocephalous churches, having its own head. Now, can any Eastern Catholic Church be autocephalous? Be its own head? Be careful. Father Robert, take a guess.
No, they can't.
Why can't they?
Because if we talk about the belonging to the Catholic Church in a way, then we are a sui iuris as far as our right and tradition are concerned. But when it becomes, and discipline, I think, now you'll get to discipline later on,
Mhm.
but we
Which is
cannot
all part of a rite.
yes. But we cannot be just totally autonomous because we are part of a whole.
Perfect. We are subject to the authority of the Roman Pontiff and the College of Bishops. So we can't be autocephalous. We are under the Pope. Now, so sui iuris, the best way to translate it in your own mind is self-governing. Now, the Latin Church is also a sui iuris church, like the 23 Eastern Catholics. However, I would say it's sui iuris, but it's also sui generis, because there's no other one like it. For example, as Pope Francis talks about a lot, there is no synodal structure, truly a synodal structure in the Latin Church. Even what they call a synod is not really a synod yet. Also, it's a problem because the head of the Catholic Church is also the head of the Latin Church. Okay, the Pope has many titles. He's Bishop of Rome. He's head of the Latin Church. He has no title now because Pope Benedict took out that title, Patriarch of the West, and he's the head of the Universal Church. This is always important to keep in mind. I'll say it this way. When the Pope, in his name, somebody is appointing the assistant pastor at St. Gregory the Great Church, which is around the corner from the Vatican, is he exercising universal power of Peter? Ronald?
Yes, Monsignor.
Do you
Chorbishop.
think that when the Pope is appointing the assistant pastor at St. Gregory Church in Rome, or when he's giving a dispensation for disparity of cult for a couple getting married in Rome, is he exercising the universal authority of the papacy?
No, because the Pope is considered the Bishop of Rome.
Perfect, Ronald. Perfect. He's exercising his power as the Bishop of Rome. When he promulgates all the liturgical books for the Latin Church, he's functioning as the Patriarch of the Latin Church. And when he's declaring a dogma or convoking an ecumenical council, he is functioning as the successor of Peter, head of the Universal Church. Now, I'll read Canon 27. We're talking about churches sui iuris now. Canon 27 says, a community of the Christian faithful, which is joined together by a hierarchy according to the norm of law, and which is expressly or tacitly recognized as sui iuris by the supreme authority of the church, is called in this code a church sui iuris. A very circular definition, but we'll tear it apart a little bit. First of all, a church sui iuris is a community of the faithful. It's not anybody that comes along. It is a stable community of the Christian faithful, distinct from others. You can't just wander from the Maronite church to the Melkite church to the Armenian church. You belong to a stable community of Christian faithful. Now, it's also not our free will. It's according to law. The patriarch, when he governs the church in union with the synod, doesn't do whatever he wants. He governs the church according to the provisions of this code. The powers he has are found in this code. I don't want to get into it very much, but it was a real problem because they had to say, oh, the patriarch and the bishops and the synod. How can they exercise authority? How can the patriarch exercise the authority over another bishop if all bishops rule by divine right? Because the Pope says, in virtue of his supreme authority, the patriarch with his synod can do certain things. He can pass laws. He can resolve issues, and he can give direction, orders, executive, legislative, and judicial power. A key to this is it's recognized by the supreme authority of the church. The Maronites cannot declare themselves autonomous. For example, the church in the United States, could it declare itself to be a church sui iuris? Father George, Alhaj.
The Church in the the Catholic Church in the United States cannot be sui iuris because it belongs to the Latin Church. It does not have the tradition of its own.
And it can't break away. Now, maybe in the future, there will be churches sui iuris. I was very surprised when the Anglicans came into union with the Catholic Church, that group of Anglicans. They created ordinariates. I was very surprised they didn't create a church sui iuris because they were the perfect candidate for such a thing. So, we belong to the Maronite Church, which is a church sui iuris. What I'd like to talk about now is, how does one become a member of a church sui iuris? Okay, now, let me get into the fundamental reason why I'm talking about this. Why, we call it ascription. Why is this membership in a certain church sui iuris so important? What does it matter? Okay, you become a Catholic, so to speak. I can remember one time I was making out a will. And I lived part-time in Florida, part-time in New York. And I wanted to assert that I was a resident of Florida in order to avoid New York taxes. It never worked, but I wanted to try. So when I made out the will, I said, I, John Faris, a citizen of the United States, and immediately the diocesan attorney, who was also my personal attorney, Kevin Carney, I think some of you might remember him, crossed that out and put a resident of the state of New York. All laws governing wills belong to the jurisdiction of the state, not a federal government. You have to be a member of the state. You can't enter the Catholic Church and not be a member of a certain church sui iuris. You can't say I'm a Catholic, but I'm not Maronite. I'm just a Catholic. I'm not Latin Catholic. I'm not Melkite. I just wander around. No. When you are baptized or when you are received into the Catholic Church, you are a member, you are assigned or ascribed to a specific church sui iuris. Now, what does this have to do with your lives? As I said, when a person becomes a Catholic, they are assigned which book to follow, which code of law. That's first thing. They're assigned which law they're subject to, and they are assigned a hierarch. Now, let me give you a practical consequence of this. Let's say that in Chicago, a Maronite man wants to marry a Jewish woman. Okay? And it's in a Latin parish. And the pastor, his name, let's say his name is Haddad, whatever. But he's Maronite, and the priest has no idea what Maronite is. So they send into the Archdiocese of Chicago a request for a dispensation for disparity of cult, disparity of worship. Do I have you still? Maronite man, Jewish woman, not baptized, in a Latin parish in Chicago. The pastor sends it in. Cardinal Supich gives a dispensation. Okay, and the Latin priest marries this couple. Everything's done in good faith. Nobody knows differently. Nobody knows differently. Now, the marriage is performed. Is the marriage valid or invalid? Who wants to take a guess?
It's invalid.
It's invalid. It's invalid. Why?
Because neither Kupich or whoever has jurisdiction over the Maronite.
And so the dispensation was invalid, therefore the marriage is invalid.
True.
So these can have very grave consequences for the validity of a sacrament, determining who is going to be, who is the person's pastor and the law to which they are obliged to follow. For example, there's another thing that happened a lot. Let us say that in Kansas, a Maronite couple lived there. They both were Maronites, a boy and a girl. They wanted to get married, but there was no Maronite priest in anywhere around. So the pastor wrote to Bishop Zaidan and got a delegation to perform the wedding. Okay? He then was even more precise, went to the nuncio and got permission to celebrate it according to the Latin rite. Everything was done right. The pastor that morning of the wedding wasn't feeling so well. And he delegated Deacon Jeffrey to do the wedding. Is the wedding valid or invalid? The marriage?
Invalid.
Invalid.
Deacon cannot perform weddings.
Deacons cannot perform weddings, and these people are subject to the Eastern
Maronite law.
Maronite law, Eastern law, not Latin law. So far, so good? Okay, now, how does one, so that's the reason why we're talking about this. How does ascription occur? One is ascribed or made a member of a church Sui Iuris in two different ways. One through baptism, or another through reception into full communion. A person who is, let's say, a baptized Ukrainian Orthodox can be received into the Catholic Church and then is ascribed to a specific Church Sui Iuris. So let's talk about baptism first. And we're going to go to Canon 29. Canon 29 of the Eastern Code. Paragraph 1.
Senor, Monsignor,
Yes,
just a quick question.
sure.
You know, about still in marriage outside of the jurisdiction of the area.
Sure.
Our brother Paul El Halal, I had the honor to marry them in the beautiful Notre Dame University at the chapel there, Sacred Heart.
Mhm.
So at that time, Paul was living in Indiana for longer than 6 months. But let's say if he was living only for 1 month and is not yet a resident of the eparchy of Our Lady of Lebanon, and he wanted me to perform the wedding, you know, how would it work with Bishop Gregory to give me permission? At that time, I didn't need a permission from Bishop Gregory, although I asked Bishop Gregory. But what time do I need permission from Bishop Gregory to marry someone who was from his eparchy, living in the Western eparchy? You know, we're one church, but still 2 eparchies.
Your 2 eparchies. He cannot give delegation outside of his eparchy. Indiana, he cannot give delegation. So
Okay.
his permission was not necessary. The way that would be the safest way would be for Bishop Zaidan to give permission for that marriage to be celebrated.
Okay.
That's the way it would. See, and it's not, 1 month doesn't establish residency. It's a residency is established by 3 months with the intention to stay.
Okay.
Okay? The best way to do that is to seek the bishop of the place.
Okay.
You can't give delegation. Let's say your parishioner wants to get married in Notre Dame. You can't give permission. That has to come from the bishop. You cannot delegate outside your territory.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
And anytime when they pop into your head, guys, ask me. Ask me. Stop me. So, baptism. How does baptism determine ascription? First of all, I want to say one thing. Our baptismal forms are inadequate. Okay? All the ones you buy, you know, that are in a pad, you know, from the, you buy them from whatever religious goods company, throw them away. Throw them away. Do them, write a letter. Don't use those certificates because they're misleading. Because what information that should always be indicated on those forms is the ascription status of both parents. John Smith, a member of the Latin Church, and Mary Haddad, a member of the Melkite Church, had their son baptized on such and such a day. This child, in such and such a place. This child was ascribed to the Melkite Church. Now, that's possible. But if you use the forms, you don't know. You don't know. Okay, let me give you the first. Okay, I'm just going to read the canon for you, just so you say you can have heard it, and we'll move on. A son or daughter who has not yet completed 14 years of age is ascribed by virtue of baptism to the Church Sui Iuris, to which his or her Catholic father is ascribed. If only the mother is Catholic, or if both parents are of the same mind requesting it, to the Church Sui Iuris of the mother, without prejudice to the particular law enacted by the Catholic Church. So, the main thing is, when somebody walks into your office and they want to get married, the first question you usually ask is, where were you baptized? Right? We all do it. That is not helpful. That's sometimes very misleading, because where the person is baptized does not determine their ascription status. The ascription status of their parents determines the ascription status. That's why it needs to be on the certificates. So the code, the canon, foresees a few scenarios here. First of all, if the parents are both Catholic, write it down, both Catholic, belong to the same church, Sui Iuris, they have no choice with regard to the selection of ascription for the child. If those parents in Kansas, they're both Maronite, and they take their baby to be baptized at the Latin Church, what is the baby's ascription status?
Maronites.
Maronite. Maronite. Because it's not where the child was baptized, it's where the status of the parents. Another question. Since that baby is Maronite, can the Latin priest confirm it?
Technically, yes.
No.
No, technically, no.
Technically, no. Because we have to go according to his faculties, not the faculties of the baby, not the status of the baby. Okay? He doesn't have the faculties to confirm a baby.
Then why do we confirm Latin babies?
Because we have the faculty to confirm. Okay, I usually don't though. I usually let the confirmation of a Latin baby wait, but it would be valid but illicit.
But in our eparchy, we have to baptize and confirm at the same time.
That's why we shouldn't be baptizing Latin babies.
But if you have to.
I do.
Mhm.
Like I said, I do. Because they baptize thousands of ours. I do. It's like I said, it's valid, but not licit. Monsignor George, I just confirmed the fiance of Brandon Shalita. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And it was almost licit. It was almost licit, almost legal, but it was valid. Okay.
Add some tune to it, will be fine.
Exactly. We'll make her a Maronite. Questions? Yes.
Chorbishop.
Yes.
So if go ahead.
So a month ago, I baptized a 27 years old young lady who's getting married this coming Saturday. She's engaged to a Melkite, and I baptized her, and Father Albert is working on the dispensation for me. You know, at the time of baptism, because she's 27, could she choose what rite she wants to be in? Can she?
Yes, she can. After the age of 14, they can decide. But here's the complication of Bona Charbel. Because you're Maronite, okay, one should be baptized and ascribed to that church. So technically, when she was baptized, she was ascribed to the Maronite church. After she's married, if she wants to transfer to the Melkite, she can do so. After she is married.
Okay.
Okay, but
Thank
you
you.
have the right to baptize her and chrismate her.
And I gave her a big slap too.
Okay, and then if tell her to stay marinated, it's much better than Malkite. Okay. Any more questions, Father
Yes.
Robert?
So if we baptized a Catholic person, a Latin child, and we confirm them at the same time, can they be confirmed later on when they go
No.
to the... So it will be accepted by the Latin Church.
It has to be accepted. Sometimes I will have bishops approach me and ask, well, it was confirmed once, but they're in line. Can I confirm them again? Or can I just act like I'm confirming them? I said, well, Bishop, you can. It's called a sacrilege. Okay. You can't rebaptize people. You can't reconfirm people. You can't unordain somebody or reordain them. They are what they are. Okay. So if anybody says, and you'll have it a lot, no, you cannot reconfirm. It doesn't exist. So we have the first scenario of two Catholics belonging to the same church, Sui Iuris. Then the second scenario is a Catholic mother and a non-Catholic father. It doesn't matter whether the man is Ukrainian Orthodox, Armenian Orthodox, Protestant, not baptized. The key factor is the Catholic woman. If the father is non-Catholic, it's ordinarily his church ascription that determines. If he's not Catholic, then you follow the church of the mother. Now, if the mother is Armenian Catholic and the father is Ukrainian Orthodox, what are the options for the people with regard to ascription?
Armenian Catholic.
Armenian Catholic. Can they have the baby baptized according to the Ukrainian Catholic Church?
Technically, they should not, but they would do it.
They try, but it's wrong.
Yeah.
They try, but it's wrong.
Yeah.
Because the man's not. What you have then is you have in the family, you have a Ukrainian Orthodox,
And Armenian
an
Catholic.
Armenian Catholic, and a Ukrainian Catholic.
Yeah.
Machluta. Okay, that's the second scenario. The third scenario is, and here's where the problems come in. The father is Catholic, belongs to one church, Sui Iuris. The mother is Catholic and belongs to another church, Sui Iuris. Okay, two different churches, Sui Iuris. What is the default ascription?
Father.
Father. What do the parents have the right to do?
Choose what right.
What are their options?
Choose either the mother or the father.
Right. Now, if they can choose, well, they have the right to choose the mother. They don't have to choose the father.
Yeah.
Now, if they have the right to choose the mother, you need to put that in the baptismal register. Because otherwise, people will presume they see the right of the father, the ascription status of the father. Okay? Now,
Senor?
yes.
In the case of, again, this is a different scenario, but again, you got two people belong to two different churches, non-Maronites. Can they choose to baptize, two babies in the Melkite and two babies in the Ukrainian Catholics, if they are, for example? Has it happened?
Yes. What
So
happens
you could choose.
sometimes in the, especially in the Byzantine churches, what they will do is they will baptize all the boys in the church of the father and all the girls in the church of the mother. The only time they would change it is if the father is a priest, all the children are baptized in the church of the father. But that really is not against the law, but it's against the spirit of the law. Because what the law wants, why the law is so flexible, the law wants the family to follow one rite, to observe one rite. And if they're ascribed all over the place, then it's problematic.
Chorbishop, a question.
Yes.
In the last example that you gave, where the parents are of each to Sui Iuris Catholic churches.
Mhm.
If that decision, if the decision of the parents is to ascribe the child to the church of the mother, but that is not reflected in the paperwork, when somebody is going, when that person is going to get married, say it's a boy and they're getting married, right? Would they be considered according to what their parents intended when they baptized them, or according to what's on the documentation?
Well, the one it can be according to the intention as long as you can prove it. As long as you can prove it.
So the parents would have to still be alive, theoretically.
Yeah, it can be proven by, for example, if the father's a Latin and the woman's a Maronite, they have a baby, they take it to the Maronite church to be baptized. Then the facts would indicate that they intended the child to be Maronite, the facts of the case. But if you don't put it in sometimes, it can be a problem. Now, let's say it's a doubt whether the person's a Maronite or a Latin. They get married and the dispensation could be invalid because of this doubt. The marriage is still valid. Because in the case of a doubt, marriage always enjoys the favor of the law. The validity of the marriage goes even if it's not clear, there's a doubt. So far, so good?
Thank you.
Okay. Now, if the person is over 14 and not baptized and over 14, that's the second part of canon, that's canon 30. Okay? Canon 30. If the person is over 14, as in the case of Chorbishop Charbel, his baptism of that woman, the child is emancipated from the parents as far as ascription status. They can be baptized and ascribed in any church they desire over the age of 14.
Chorbishop?
Yes.
But in this situation, it doesn't make sense for that person to be baptized by a Maronite priest when he desires to enter a Melkite church.
Precisely. He should be baptized in the church to which he is to be ascribed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, as Father Sharp, but this case, she was being baptized a Maronite. Maybe she wants to stay a Maronite. That's up to her.
We'll see.
Plus, there is no Melkite church in Minnesota, for example.
Yeah. So you have to, and you can correct the things later if she wants them to be corrected.
Question.
Yes.
If a 14-year-old kid can choose what rite he or she wants to belong to, why can they be godparents at baptism?
It's 16 now. Well, here's why. Here's why they're doing it, why that age 14 is there. It used to be the age of marriage. And I have to do this, every time I get asked a question, I have to check because, okay, if you go to Canon 800, paragraph 1, the minimum age for marriage for a girl is 14. So they have tied it to that age. But that doesn't mean that they're going to change all the legislation. We have in the Maronite church, is it 18?
18.
18 now.
Mhm.
I think it's too old, but no one asked me.
A question about terminology.
Yes.
When someone is baptized, does he belong to a rite or does he belong to a Sui Iuris church?
A church. He's baptized according to a rite for ascription to a church. We are always baptized according to a rite. That's the way we do things. A rite is the way we live out our faith, but the church is the community in which we are ascribed. Okay? Have I managed?
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so going back to the lady that Chorbishop Charbel spoke about,
Yes.
that she was baptized as Maronite. Now, if she wants to change her membership to the Maronite church, does she require a dispensation from the bishop, the Maronite bishop,
It's
and
more
then an
complicated than
acceptance?
that.
I mean,
It's more
All right.
complicated than that.
Yeah.
Here's what would happen. If I mistake the facts, but the facts of the case, according to what I understood, was she is engaged to a Melchite. Okay, so immediately after the marriage, she can declare herself to be a member, to want to transfer to the Melchite church, and it's done. Now, what could not happen, though, is, I'll just mention it, we can get into it later. We have a Maronite girl and a Melchite boy, right? Then when they get married, the Eastern Catholic girl can transfer to the church of the husband. In the Eastern churches, the Eastern Catholic man cannot transfer to the church of his wife. Okay? It just doesn't happen. For example, if she were marrying, I'll get into it in a minute. I don't want to confuse you right now. But that's the way she would do it. She would not have, if to do it beforehand would be more complicated. An unmarried person, it's a longer process. Now, so a 14-year-old can choose. A person that is baptized already and is received into the Catholic Church, what do we do there? Well, that person follows the rite which they observed before they were Catholic. Before they were Catholic. For example, a Lutheran who became a Catholic is ascribed to the Latin Church. Okay? Now, no matter who received her, she's ascribed to the Latin Church. The problem is, for us, we Maronites don't have an Orthodox counterpart. So there's really nobody that we could receive that has to retain. There is no Maronite Orthodox rite. All the other churches have Orthodox counterparts. Ukrainian Orthodox, Armenian Orthodox. When you, just as a bit of information, when you receive a baptismal certificate for an Armenian, and it says Armenian Apostolic Church, that is Orthodox. That is not Catholic. Armenian Apostolic Church is Orthodox, not Catholic. Now, what happens, and this happens a great many times, let's say a Ukrainian Orthodox is going through the local Latin RCIA program. Now, they're all ready. It's Holy Week. Can the Latin priest receive that person into the Catholic Church? Yes. But the person is automatically ascribed to the Ukrainian Catholic Church. The person is not ascribed to the Latin Church. Then you can go through the canonical process to transfer. Now, I would like to go into the transfer, but we don't have time and it's too important to rush. So I will do that part before we start the next subject. Yeah, I'm open to questions.
An ecumenical question.
Sure.
When you have, for example, a Maronite who wants to marry an Orthodox, regardless who the Orthodox is,
Yes.
then according to the Maronite law, the children are a Maronite.
The Maronite law said that the Eastern Catholic law says that in order for an Eastern Catholic to marry an Eastern non-Catholic, they have to promise to do their best to have their children raised Catholic.
Okay. So, but
Okay?
after if they're baptized, they are ascribed to, in this case, the Maronite Church, correct?
Well, what I would ask is, where were they baptized?
Okay, let's say you have two options, Maronite Church or an Orthodox Church.
If they were baptized in the Orthodox Church, I would call them Orthodox.
And if they're baptized in the Maronite Church, they're
I would
called
call them
Maronite.
Maronite.
Now, how, if they're baptized in the Maronite Church, how does the Orthodox Church look at them? And does the Orthodox Church look at them as Orthodox and rejects
No, they would look like them. They would look at them as Catholics. They may have a lot of problems with the parent who didn't have the child baptized Catholic. The Greek Orthodox are funny. The Greek Orthodox, as long as you get the baby baptized in the Orthodox Church, they don't care if that kid ever comes back. They might like to see the baby for the wedding, but they don't care if the kid comes back. So, but I would say, look at the facts on the ground, unless there is some other evidence to the contrary. Okay, the minister of the baptism is sometimes very important. Sometimes it's insignificant. If the child's baptized in a hospital by a nurse. More questions? Let's see. Any marriage questions you have? Monsignor Bill, you don't have any questions. Well, Father Ronald, was this kind of the information you needed?
Yeah, no doubt.
This is what you wanted. Okay.
Thank you. I'm grateful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
this is what you wanted. And I knew it was coming, but sometimes I have to get through the first so that you understand the context. So now what we have done is we've talked about the distinction, and you guys got it. Sometimes students won't get it. I was teaching I'll give you this. I was teaching a group of canon law students by Zoom at Catholic University. And Zoom, we're all in each other's faces. And I asked the one student, I said, Father Stephen, you seem to have left us. Where are you? What are you thinking about? And he looked at me, he looked up, he said, popsicles. He said, I had a popsicle at our break, and I think I want to have another popsicle. So I said, okay, think about popsicles. But we talked about rite. We talked about, which is a way of living the faith. We talked about tradition, which is a family of rites. We talked about church Sui Iuris, which is a self-governing church, and the Latin church is included. And then we talked about how is one ascribed to a church Sui Iuris. We also talked about the importance of determining the ascription status, because it can affect the validity of the marriage. And with that, everybody on the East Coast can go and have lunch.